first sermon, and we talked about the certainty of death and how death is on all of our schedules. And it is a schedule that we all must prepare for. It is not a good thing to plan a trip and don't know where you're going before you get there. And since death is on the schedule, it's a good idea to plan, to get your ticket in your hand, because death is absolutely certain. I want to look today at Solomon's perspective about life. I preached the whole book of Solomon, but I want to kind of give a survey of what he says about life, because we're dealing with the series, One Life and One Lifetime to Live It. It is an important subject to discuss. Mark Twain made this statement: it would be great if we could start at 80, could be born at 80 and progressively go back to 18. He made that statement because he was with the opinion that if you could be born at 80, you could be a lot wiser at 18. Ain't it the truth what I just said? Think about the mistakes you made at 18, but the wisdom you have gained by the time you get 80. And Twain had a pretty good idea, but life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work where we can get the wisdom before we start living life. Life works this way: you live and you learn. But this particular book is an accumulation of wisdom that is gained from the wisest man that ever lived. Solomon is going to say to us and to all of human history, there are some mistakes you don't have to experience. You don't have to learn from your mistakes. You can learn from his wisdom. I'm telling you, in this book, Solomon gives us wisdom. Wisdom about life. A perspective about life. You already know who Solomon is. He's the wisest man to ever live. He followed his father as the king of Israel. And God asked him a question. God asked him a question: what do you want from me? Solomon could have asked for riches and glory and power. But what Solomon asked for was wisdom. Because he was so modest in his response to God, God gave him power, riches, and wisdom. Solomon's wisdom was put on display when two women had a dispute about the same child. Solomon deliberated that case and discovered that the woman who loved the child the most was willing to give up the child so that the child wouldn't be harmed. That's wisdom. But then Solomon ran into life. My brothers and sisters, keep living. You'll run into life. No matter how wise you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how much access you have to everything, eventually you will run into life. Solomon pens the book of Ecclesiastes at a stage in his life when life hit him head first. He wrote in this particular book some things that he wants to share with us to help us to have a better perspective about life. Mark Twain was still alive, I tell him, you can't start life at 80. With all the wisdom that you need for life. But you can learn from others if you would just take the time to inquire, to discover, to look into their life. And what Solomon does in the book of Ecclesiastes is very interesting. Not many of us would do what Solomon does. He makes his life very transparent to us. He makes his life very real to us. He makes his struggles very open to us. Yeah. See, many of us act like we ain't never made a mistake. We ain't never messed up. We ain't never fell short. We ain't never questioned God. We've never questioned life itself. But in this book, Solomon runs into life. If I had time, I'd explain to you, this is a man who had everything. Had access to everything. He had power, money, wisdom, access. He had it all. The book of Ecclesiastes is his memoir of the struggles he had with all of that at his disposal. This book is broke down into three sections, and I want to kind of give you a survey of the three sections the book is broke down in. The first section deals with Solomon's search. Solomon's search for meaning and purpose. And that is chapters 1 through 5. And 5 chapters in this first section, Solomon is searching for meaning. Because he starts out by saying all is vanity. All is empty. All is meaningless. And it really doesn't take hold to the depth and the deepness of this statement that he opens the book up until you consider who it is that is making the statement. It is Solomon, the wisest man, the richest man, a man who had prominence, power, and prestige. He is searching for meaning. And so in this first section, he is searching for meaning. The second section, chapters 6 through 10, he is speaking some sayings. In other words, he is giving some warnings, some cautions, some instructions, some precautions, and then he throws in a little advice. Solomon says that in these sayings, he says there are some things I need to warn you about. Some things that you need to be cautious about. Some instructions you need to follow. And some precautions you need to take. And then Solomon gives some advice. And my brothers and sisters, the most valuable thing you could ever acquire in life is advice. Let me give it to you so it's less offensive. The word advice literally means to get some counsel. And that is to ask somebody to get some information about where you're going because they've already been there. And so Solomon in these chapters gives us some very important sayings. After he searches, he discovers some things, and in these chapters 6 through 10, he's going to try to pen some of these warnings and cautions and instructions and precautions. And he's going to give some advice to us. And then in chapters 11, which is the third section, he's going to to give us the solution. The solution he came up with about life. And, he says now, he just really comes up with a couple of conclusions when he comes up with these solutions. He's going to search, and then he's going to say some things about life. He gives us some warnings, some cautions, and instructions, and precautions, and some advice. But then he's going to say, he's going to give a conclusion to the whole matter. For almost 12 chapters, he sums up his search in his sayings with one verse, and really with about 2 or 3 sentences. He concludes the whole matter. I mean, one of the things that Solomon concludes, and you better look at this and you better read it carefully. Solomon concludes that life is predictable. That there are some things going to happen to every human being. That you're not exempt from suffering what every human being suffers. He talks about the currents and the waters and the clouds and the weather. And he says that's just predictable. And then really what he says in this predicting that all human beings will suffer some of the same maladies, some of the same tragedies, some of the same benevolence. He says there is nothing new under the sun. What has been is. And he really says nothing changes. It's so predictable. Life is predictable. And really he concludes it like this. You're born. You suffer. There's very little good that happens, and then you die. That's a pretty sad report, isn't it? But he says life is very predictable. If you think you're going to make it through this life unscathed, uninjured, without suffering, without pain, without disappointment, Solomon says, forget it. You're going to suffer what every human being has to suffer if they are born into this life. Man born of a woman has a few days, and the few days are full of trouble. Life's pretty predictable. And I need to go ahead and drop this off to some of you young ones. If you don't get old, you die young. Thank God I'm older. And that's one of the things that Solomon predicts. You're going to get old. We'd really like to only read chapter 12, verse 1, but keep on reading. He started talking about how your vision going to get dim. Your hearing is going to fade. Your steps going to get short. And he talked about the keeper of the house. And literally he talks about all of the arthritis, the gout, the joint pain. All that stuff going to creep in. And this old body ain't like it used to. Solomon says life is pretty predictable. I know you don't want to hear that. You think you're the exception to the rule, that you're going to bypass some of the suffering, the pain, the difficulty, and the disappointment of life. But let me tell you, you in line with everybody else. Life going to dish out to you what he dishes out to everybody else. And let me tell you something. You're going to suffer the predictability of life. I don't care where you live, how much money you have, what color you are, what ethnic group you were born into, what country you live in. Don't think you have it better in in a life predictability sense than the people in Africa. Y'all might have different economic situations, different governmental systems governing the way you live and the kind of society you live in, but we all suffering the same thing. And then he I'm going to deal with Solomon's perspective about life. And I'm going to kind of give you just you're going to need a pen, because listen, these are some things Solomon concludes when he kind of goes through this book. And I just pulled them out. I pulled them out because there's so many more than I could tell you about. Some conclusions Solomon came to as he wrote this, but I just want to pull a couple of them out. And one of the first things that he says in this book that about life, he says life can be very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong thing. All right. Keep focusing on what doesn't really matter. Keep focusing on what really doesn't have any value. Keep focusing on what makes you feel good but brings no satisfaction to nobody but you. Life can be very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong things. I mean, if you read and keep reading the book of Ecclesiastes, you're going to discover that Solomon says there is nothing that I withheld from myself. If I desired it, if it brought me pleasure, if it brought me satisfaction, I did it. And after I did it, I was still unsatisfied. And listen, I love that he used the phrase chasing the wind. I keep chasing the wind. You'll never catch it because you can't see it. You'll never catch it because it is invincible. It's not visible. You're just chasing. And listen, he says that life will be very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong thing. Now, 2 men got divorced in the last 2 years. 2 men, their wives left. And Earthquake, the comedian, says, now, a sister wouldn't have left these brothers. But you think these women were completely satisfied because they had everything. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, his wife divorced him. She had everything. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, his wife left him. She had everything. Now you and I, looking from the outside in, would say, why would these women leave these men with this much access? Because see, you focusing on the wrong thing. Money don't make you happy. And money can't bring you satisfaction. It means something to you, but really it cannot bring you satisfaction. Solomon concludes that life is very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong things. And listen, I can just talk about a little bit of what he discusses in these verses, but man, the dude just kind of laid it out. He says in that second chapter, around verse 10, whatever my eyes desires, I did not keep them from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. And he talked about the works of his hands and what he pursued and what he chased after. but it was like chasing after the wind. Life is very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong thing. And let me tell you something. Sometimes you got to look at the big picture. Then sometimes you got to look at the details. Because see, you think that life ought to be fairer to you. But life is not fair to any of us. None of us get all that we want. You get some of what you want. And see, you think because you're who you are, you love the Lord loves you, and you do right, that every good thing that life has to offer, every good thing that God has to give, you deserve. That nothing bad ought to happen to you. Come here, Joe, enter this conversation. And let me interview you. If you read Job chapter 1, he has a pretty good resume, a good moral life. He fears God. He avoids evil, but yet he's a pretty good candidate for suffering. See, you think you deserve more than what you deserve. That you've earned more than what you have really earned. I don't want to get happy, but listen. Sister Copeland is right. I get more than I deserve. Show no more than I've earned. And if I get anything, it's by the grace. I don't deserve nothing good because I ain't good. Born in sin, shaped in iniquity. Every thought I have is evil and unpleasant and ungodly, but God. See, I don't think I'm entitled to nothing. Life don't owe me nothing. Life can be very unsatisfying if you focus on the wrong thing. Now check this one out. Solomon made this observation in this book. Life can be very frustrating if nothing can satisfy you. Life can be very frustrating if nothing can satisfy you. In other words, you always searching, ain't nothing ever good enough, and you deserve better. That's the way some folks think. See, you looking for the perfect man, the perfect woman, the perfect job, the perfect situation, the perfect income. Everything's got to be perfect. Your standard is so high that you won't accept anything but perfection. Life can be frustrating if nothing can satisfy you. You know, you can't be satisfied here because the folk are flawed. Keep going and go on somewhere else. You're going to run into some more flawed folk. Man you got ain't good enough because he got a couple of teeth missing, a little overweight. Go on get another one. He going to be just like that in a couple of years. Because you can't be satisfied with nothing. Because there's people who think they deserve better and they can search and they have forever to search, and so they're going to look for perfection. If the truth be told, all of us got stuff that's flawed somewhere. And if the truth be told, I don't mind that because I'm flawed. I need somebody to put up with the worst in me. Yeah. And because they put up with the worst in me, I can put up with the worst in them. Yeah. Yeah. And see, the problem is you think you ain't flawed. Yeah. You ain't broken. You ain't cracked. Just because we can't see your crack don't mean you ain't got none. But you keep on trying to expose my cracks, God will expose yours. Ask Jimmy Swagger. Jim Baker got caught in his indiscretion. Jimmy Swagger's cracks were way more flawed than life can be very frustrating. And I need to go ahead and stop off and tell you that's why some of you are frustrated. Because nothing satisfies. You got access to everything. You can have anything. But you ain't never satisfied. And that's why you are frustrated. And I need to tell you the predictability that Solomon talks about when I open this sermon. Frustration is a constant part of life. You will never live in this world without being frustrated about something. Let me give you this third perspective Solomon has. I wish I could really get this one over to folks. Life has seasons. Chapter 3. And I was listening to Skip Heigl this morning, and Skip said this. If you read chapter 3, read it like this. Everything that's listed in chapter 3, guess what? It's going to happen in your life. He didn't just pull these out of the air. But Solomon says all of these that are listed, these are going to be seasons in your life. In other words, all of these things are going to happen. And he talked about the predictability of life. There's going to be a time when you're born. There's going to be a time when you die. That's predictable. There's going to be a time when you go through a season of planting, and there's going to be a time when you go through a season of plucking. All of these seasons, there are seasons in your life. And listen, these seasons are controlled by God. You don't determine when you're born. You said mom and daddy did. Don't believe that. They were trying to have a good time, and you the result of that. You don't get to plan when you die. That is determined by God. There are just seasons in your life. And if I could teach people this, it would cut down your level of frustration when you see other people prosper and other good things happen in the life of other people, when you realize it just ain't your season. There are seasons in your life, there are times in your life, and these times are predestined by God. Because of his sovereign omnipotence, he knows and can seize, and he can plan your life before you're ever born. When it talks about the Lord orders the steps of a good man, it literally doesn't mean when the man is born. He told Jeremiah, before you were put in the womb, I already knew how your life was going forward. The problem is you don't know. But God already knows. You surprised about the things that happen, but God ain't. And I can give you some of these that you just don't like. You sure don't like verse 4, time to weep. You don't like them seasons of weeping. You want the seasons of laughter. And you don't like the time to mourn. You don't like that. And it's a time to dance. There's a time to cast away stones, a time to gather, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. These are seasons. Boy, you got to know that these seasons come like the weather. They come at a time when you ain't prepared for them. All you have to learn to do is adjust. Don't complain about them, adjust. If it's raining, get an umbrella. I can do you one better than that. If you're so unsatisfied about the rain, stay in the house and under the shelter. But don't complain. It's cold outside, get a coat. If not, stay in front of the heat. Yeah. But you can't no more control the weather than you control getting old. Let me give you this next thing. The seasons. I could just teach that one thing because I'm understanding that there's a season in my life, seasons in my life that God is controlling. And listen, it cuts down on the frustration. Because what I discovered after reading this and really studying the book of Ecclesiastes, nobody is holding me back. Nobody is preventing me from going where God has predestined. Nobody is in my way. Nobody is really holding me back. The better perspective, it just ain't my time. And some of these people and circumstances are necessary on my way to where God is taking me. Don't get out of the way. Stay right where you are. Because let me tell you, when God wants to get you out of the way, He will. Don't you ever look at Luke chapter 1 at the birth of Jesus and don't remember that Herod tried to prevent the birth of Jesus by sending shepherds and wise men to find Jesus so he could kill Jesus. But Luke chapter 1, Sister Martha, says at the very end, and Herod died. When God wants to get who's trying to stop you out of the way, He will. God have them there for a reason. You got to know listen, I'm not even frustrated no more. Everybody that's supposed to be here is here. Everybody that ain't, they ain't here. And ain't nothing I can do to get the folk who ain't here back here. This is just the season we're in. Let me give you this one. Life can be very empty if all you think about is you and only you. This one is so profound because we never lived in an age where we are so selfish. Everything is about you. It's about how you feel. It's about your pain, your suffering, your frustration, your comfort, your pleasure. Everything in your life is about you. You make you the center of attention. You don't ever consider anybody outside of yourself. Solomon said, I tried that. And what I discovered that a rope with 3 cords is better. And really he talks about the value of friends and friendships. And if you make life only about you and you only, life will be very empty. In other words, you don't need nobody. Isn't that the silliest statement that ever been made? You don't need nobody. Well, then you take your own trash to the landfill. Provide your own electricity. Grow your own food. Make your own clothes. I ain't talking about make them from material that somebody else made. You go out there and pick the cotton and grow the cotton. Harvest the cotton. If you don't need nobody. See, you real silly to think you can make it in this world without somebody. Don't be that stubborn and ignorant to think you don't need somebody. And Solomon says, if you focus only on things and stuff, life's going to be empty. And let me tell you something, people going to make you mad, they're going to tick you off. They're going to break your heart, but you still need people. Move on and find some new friends, find some new people. But don't try to go at this alone. You need people. Life will be empty if you only think about you. And I really want to talk about this for just a few minutes before I close. You need people. And Solomon says you need lasting and long friendships. And in order to have lasting and long friendships, you can't sweat the small stuff. You have to look at the big picture. He really talks about in the text, you don't really have but 3 friends, really 2. You and that cord and about 2 other people. Because you only ever really get to know 2 people genuinely in a lifetime. And that friendship ought to survive disappointment, trouble, frustration, heartbreak. It's hard to find friends. Ain't the truth what I'm saying? It's hard to find people you can count on. He says life is very empty if you only focus on you and only you. And then I want to just tag this text at this point on with that one. People are more important than things. He came to that conclusion that people are more important than things. I really want to put some weight on this point. People are more important than material things, and people are more important than the petty stuff that we break up, fight over, mad about. Jordan Peterson says this: don't let people have free space in your mind and in your heart to keep you frustrated, upset, and depressed. That space in your head and heart is for productive stuff, fertile stuff, stuff that nourish you, grow you, strengthen you for life. But don't give people free space in your mind and in your heart to keep you unforgiving, angry, mad, upset. You could be using that space for something more productive in life. And you let people take up all of your time. They living their life free and loose, and they got you bound because they taking up your head space, heart space. You the one mad. You the one avoid going into certain places because they're doing certain things because it might benefit them. They ain't got the problem you do. People are more important than things. If you lose a friendship over stuff, something's wrong with you. I fixed that a couple of years ago. Don't let nobody borrow what you can't let them have. Not a friend, a family member, not a cousin, because it's a good chance you ain't gonna get it. You can't let them have it, don't let them borrow. Don't give it to them. Then don't let your relationship be fractured and damaged by a disagreement. By expectations not met, disappointment. I don't want to talk too long on that. Come in, Jonathan. Let me interview you about your relationship with David. It said that the soul of David was netted to the soul of Jonathan. K-N-I-T. It was knitted. It's like it was sewn together. It was that was a relationship that was strong, and it was stronger than Solomon's hate for David. It was stronger than Jonathan's relationship with his father. It was stronger than the kingdom that Jonathan stood to inherit. The friendship was strong, and nothing broke or fragmented that relationship. And even though David was the king, the parent, anointed by God, and Jonathan was the rightful king after his father Saul, he would not allow nothing to get in the way of the friendship he had with David. Not power, prestige, or position. He understood the friendship. And it survived all of the ups and downs. Now, if you don't think friendships have an ebb and flow, a yin and yang, and good times, bad times, celebratory times, disappointing times, keep on living. And listen, let me give you this next thing. People are more important than things. Let me give you this one. Be patient and things will work out. Solomon came to that conclusion. Just be patient. See, you trying to rush it. You trying to figure it out instead of letting it work out. You trying to fix it. There's some things just time and patience is going to fix. Well, I got happy then. You remember when Barnabas, John Mark, and Paul had that falling out? They had a falling out because Paul didn't think that John Mark was ready for another missionary trip. The relationship just didn't work. The relationship just didn't work. And so Barnabas took John Mark and Paul went in another direction. And you'd have thought by that story, the relationship between John Mark and Paul was over. But while Paul was waiting to be executed, in that Timothy text, Paul says, bring John Mark. Because he's profitable for the ministry. Just let time, and you be patient. Everything will work out in the end. Some stuff, don't try to figure it out. Don't try to make it work. Just be patient. It'll all work out. See, you're trying too hard. You trying to fix it. And the thing with you trying to fix it, you the one that broke it. You the one that messed it up, injured it. I remember one time I broke one of my toe bones, my toes. And the doctor says, we ain't gonna put no cast, we ain't gonna do nothing. He just said it'll heal over time. And I said, but doc, it's painful. He says you gotta just endure the pain. It'll heal and reset itself. Over time. There's some injury and pain, you just have to let it. It'll reset itself and it'll heal. And you ain't got to do nothing but just keep on living. I said, Doc, do I need to sit down and just rest and not use that foot? He said, no, you need to use it. Because using it is going to help it get stronger and help it reset. Well, I just said something. See, you want to cut the whole foot off or the toe off. But just keep on walking, using it, and it'll work out in the end. See, you think that you can fix. And see, I told you there are seasons in life. There are moments in life. There are episodes in life. And see, if you cancel out watching the whole show, you just in season 1, episode 8, but there's some more episodes and more seasons, and just keep on watching the story. Be patient, things gonna work out. Solomon came to that conclusion. He said, boy, you be wanting things to just work out, but just be patient and wait, and things will just work out. See, you never thought it was going to be a day where you were going to be able to deal with the loss you suffered. But you just kept on living, kept on going, kept on praying, kept on trusting God, kept on living through all that you've been through. And look at you sitting up in here this morning. Amen. Now, there were days when you wanted to throw in the white tie. Ain't it the truth what I'm saying? There are days when tears stained your pillow. There were nights when you couldn't get a bit of sleep. Days when you stayed locked in the house, didn't want the phone to ring, didn't want anybody to knock on the door, because all of what you felt on the inside, all that you were going through on the outside. Skip Heigl says Solomon came to this conclusion. He says that Solomon was stressed on the outside, depressed on the inside, but found rest when he looked up to God. Because he said everything under the sun, S-U-N. But when you look at the sun, S-O-N, he'll give you rest. Let me give you the conclusion, Solomon, in the very last verses. Now, this is Solomon's conclusion, because I told you the book is broke down in his search, his sayings, and his solution. And Solomon says in the very last verse in this book, he says, let's hear the conclusion to the whole matter. Let's sum this up. Because I've searched, and I came up with some advice, counsel, and some advice, and some cautious warnings, and some precautions. And this is a pretty good conclusion. He says, fear God. Man, I'm telling you, that's some good stuff. I don't have time to break down the etymology of this word, but because you can get so deep in this thing, but it don't mean be scared of, but it has reverence for. It's the way you treat God, how you look at God, and put God in everything. Give every situation in your life a theological perspective. Well, I tell you, when you give your life a theological perspective, he's really saying in everything that happens in your life, every season, every episode, every person, every circumstance, consider what God is doing. God is at work in your life. Man, I just got happy. Because every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year of my life, God is at work. Fear God is to consider what God is doing. That sometimes God is the hands behind your trouble. God is the hands behind your pain. God is the hands behind your success. God is the hands behind some of the failures and disappointment. Fear God. Consider what God is doing. And then he says, keep his commandments. In other words, not only consider that God might be at work, his hands are involved in every season and episode of your life, but just to keep his commandments is to do what God says do it, the way God said do it. Amen. Now you can do it your own way and consider that truth is subjective and you get to define what's right and wrong, but let me tell you something, it ain't gonna work out for you. Now, I am old enough and wise enough because I've lived a little life, 53 years. I'm telling you, God's way is the best way, really the only way. And many of us are suffering frustration and being unsatisfied because we're trying to do it our own way. And then you better consider the verse that says there is a way that seems right to man, but in the end it'll lead to destruction. Being frustrated, unsatisfied, and always in other folks' business. Because you can't find no satisfaction you don't want nobody else to have. Because you frustrated, you want everybody else to be. And he says that this is the whole duty of man. But then he kind of tags it with a warning. So you can be mindful of how you live and what you do and how you treat others. Because he don't want you to think you're going to get by and get away. Yeah. You better mind how you live and how you treat others. Because he said, for God shall bring every work. Man, if I had time, I'd unpack this for you. Everything you do at your house, he gonna bring it into judgment. Every person he allows to be a part of your life, he gonna bring it into judgment. Every dollar you got and every dollar you've ever had, he gonna bring that into. You're going to have to give an account of your membership. You're going to bring that into judgment. Every pastor you ever had, every choir leader you've ever been under, every position you've ever held in church, going to be brought into judgment. Every thought you've ever had, every person you've ever loved, every person you've ever mistreated, every person you've ever come in contact with, is going to be brought into judgment. The person you think that didn't matter, the person you thought that did matter, going to be brought into judgment. Then he really scares me. Because look what he says in that last, closing out that verse. With every secret thing. Oh, you might hide your secrets from me. See, I'm just teaching this moment. But God gonna bring every secret thing. And secret thing is like this clicker. Hid in this envelope, in this handkerchief. You don't even know it's there. But it's there. God sees it. Man, I can talk about some of that secret stuff that you think don't hurt and harm people, but God gonna bring that stuff into judgment. And really it kind of covers everybody. Everybody's under that umbrella, because you got some things that people see, you got some things that God sees. And every secret thing I need to just break it down to you before I go to my seat. See, the sneaky, low down, dirty stuff that you think didn't nobody know you were doing behind their back gonna be brought into judgment. Every lie you told that you didn't think people knew, every marriage you broke up with that lie, every friendship you injured, every church you tore up, every relationship you fractured because of what you thought you were doing in the dark that nobody knew, nobody would discover, all that stuff. Every lie you planted, all the deception, all the double tongue talking, saying one thing but meaning another, all that stuff gonna be brought into judgment. Said you would do something, but when you knew in your heart you really wasn't gonna do a thing. That's secret stuff. I know. See, you think secret stuff is that money you got hid under the bed in the mattress. That's. I'm talking about. He talking about life. And being accountable for every thought, every decision, every action that affects your life and other people's life, your purpose, your mission, and the mission and purpose of others, all that stuff. All the two-facedness, backstabbing, the lying, the deception, all that stuff going to be brought into judgment. You better quit being that way. All the lives, families, relationships you have destroyed because of the secret things. And then listen, this is the one I love. Every time I read this part, I think about Valerie Davis when he talks about the good. If I didn't tell you what she done for me, but see, God knew. See, some stuff, some good stuff that people have done, don't nobody know about but them and God. Well, I wish I could shout right here because I explained to you. Let me explain to you this way. There's some stuff you done that was good. You didn't know just how good it was, how it blessed the person you blessed, and how it blessed the church you was a part of, the job you was on, the neighborhood you lived in, the person that you met, the person that you done what you done for. You ain't gonna know just how good it was. How it made the difference. As many motivational speakers say today, it was a game changer in the life and the circumstances of that person. That stuff might be forgotten by people, unknown by people, but it's not going to be forgotten by God. Amen. Whether good, you done planted some good seed. And it's in that text. I don't have time to point it out to you, but it's in that text because he talked about casting stones and then he talks about casting seeds and they falling on moist and penetrable soil and you just throw the seeds out there and you don't even ever see it come up. But God saw when you threw the seeds out there and when it came up, it became a tree. And when it became a tree, it provided shade. When it provided shade, it gave away leaves. When it gave its leaves, it produced the fruit. And when it produced fruit, the fruit was produced on limbs. And the limbs provided a nesting place for birds. Just because you cast the seed. Look at all the good that come from just that stuff. Don't be remembered when you get up a young enough. Oh, you ain't gonna know how what you did that was good just spread it and benefited so many people. That woman who gave that $317,000 donation to the University of Southern Mississippi and didn't nobody know she had money. All she did was iron clothes. clean house, has worked for white folk for over 50 years. That's all she did. Didn't have a husband, didn't have any children. Took that money and gave it to the University of Southern Mississippi. And she don't know how many degrees she paid for. How many scholarships she provided. How many families are blessed from her casting that good. How many families she's supporting. How many millionaires she produced from just casting that. See, I want to holler, but let me go on. I'm just telling you. Do some good. And don't nobody see it, but you and God, I guarantee you. Listen, he said that seed produces a tree, and that tree just keep growing and provides shade and leaves and fruit and limbs for nesting. And then, and listen, he talks about how that seed that is produced in that fruit is ate by a bird, and that bird eats that fruit and swallows that seed and then goes somewhere else and defecates on the ground. And guess what? Another tree is scattered from that one tree. That's going to all be brought up in judgment. Let me tell you something. Some of y'all's account might be full because don't nobody know the good you've done. The seed you sow. And then whether it's evil, I'm closing, every head bowed and every eye closed, it's going to be brought into judgment. You already know the evil that you do going to be brought up again. And you're going to pay for that. It doesn't mean by any means you're going to go to hell. It does mean that your reward in heaven is not going to be great. You're not going to have a lot of stars in your crown. You're going to make it to heaven, but you're not going to get anything for the living that you lived on earth. Don't ever forget what Jesus said in the Gospels. He said, every work is going to be cast into the fire to determine whether it's haywood or stubble, gold, silver, or precious stone. But every work, every idle thought and deed is going to be thrown into the fire. And if it survives the fire, that's going to be a star in your crown. And many theologians believe that's going to be a talent that you're going to use in heaven for eternity. And it will determine the position you hold in that holy city, that New Jerusalem, that earth, new heaven and earth coming down. I can give it to you in a modern vernacular. It might not be theologically right. Some of you are going to discover all you're going to be in heaven is a street sweep. Because what you did on earth didn't account to much. Some of you are going to be prime ministers, mayors, councilmen in the cities in this New Jerusalem, this new heaven and new earth. Because you were faithful, and when your words were put in the fire, they were determined to be gold, silver, and precious stone. Every head bowed and every eye closed. You might be here, and you don't know Jesus Christ, and you want to accept him as your personal Savior. You can come. If you're here today and you want to join the church, you might say to me, Pastor, I need to get into a closer and a deeper relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm already saved, but I want to be a member of this fellowship. You can come. You can say, Pastor, I desire prayer. You can come. A letter candidate for baptism of our Christian experience. You can come to know the Lord as your personal